And there we go. We've actually got 100 people in the room before 1 o'clock, so I've got no excuse not to get started, to use a double negative there at the front end of this thing. As mentioned in the description below the video, I got a message from my publisher, Penguin, regarding my book, American Murder Houses. And they said, hey, Steve, because of the situation we're in, Christmas approaching, yada, 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 we're going to actually give all our authors a bigger discount than they normally get. Authors usually get a discount on their own books. And they said, we're going to give you an even bigger discount. Do you want any books? I said, how big's the discount? They told me, I said, send me a case. So I've got 52 copies of American Murder Houses. And this deal is only until they're all gone. Once they're gone, they're gone. But if you want a copy of American Murder Houses, the book I wrote about houses around America where murders took place, there's a chapter each about, I think, 26 or 27 different murder houses. From me, the book is $15. If you get it on Amazon Prime, it's $16. So for me, it's cheaper. That includes shipping. I'll sign it for you. If you want it as a gift for somebody, I'll sign it to them. The only stipulation is two things. I can only do this in the U.S. I cannot sell these to Canada, Mexico, or other parts of the world simply because sending them out of the country is too complicated and expensive, doesn't make it worthwhile. And number two, I do this all using Square. So if you want a copy of American Murder Houses signed by me, sent to you in the U.S., send me an email. The email's in the description below the video. All you do is put in the subject line book or book deal or American Murder House, I don't care. And then I will invoice you via Square, and you will then pay, and I'll send the book. And in your email, let me know if you want it signed to somebody else. Otherwise, I'll sign it to you. And people always ask, besides this book, I've also got the Tucker book, the Turban Car book, the Douglas Houghton book, and the Italian Hall book, okay? I don't have as many of these laying around, but I've got a few of each. So those are all, again, at prices better than you'll find on Amazon from me, signed. So like Death's Door is $20, Douglas Houghton's $20, Tucker's $20, and the Turban Car is $15. Like I said, though, once they're gone, they're gone. So this pile behind me is going to disappear fairly quickly, I suspect, because I know that I did this back when my Winged Car book went out of print. I brought into the studio 51 copies and got rid of them in 2 days. So that was a $35 book. So we'll now move on. I hate to get all mercenary on you. Someone just mentioned the 89X sticker behind here, Keith. And the 89X sticker, sorry, over here, is a radio station out of Windsor, Canada, across the river from Detroit. And 89X recently changed formats to country. And you are correct. Gives me flashbacks. Heard they just changed to country. Yeah, that's what they did. So they were a great station, though. They played, alternative rock for a long, long time. They played a lot of music that no one else played, especially not in America. Duncan Campbell checking in from Melbourne, Australia. Good morning. And thank you for checking in. I know it's morning there, but I think it's morning on Monday. We're here. It's still Sunday afternoon. Ilya, Sunday night, live. My favorite weekly entertainment. Hello, everybody. Hello, Ilya. Thank you for checking in. I appreciate that. From Finland. Johnny Knoxville, my friend Brian, lived in a murder house, 2415 Murray Avenue, Milwaukee. I assume it wasn't a famous one because that one doesn't ring a bell. But people say, Steve, how do you write a book about murder houses? Like, what do you do? So I actually have the list here of all the murder houses and many of the murders you've heard of. And then each chapter, I start out by telling you what the murder was and the address of the house. So in the book, I've got photographs of the houses as well. Some of them, like the Lizzie Borden house or the In Cold Blood house or the Nicole Simpson condo. These are all, stories I hope you've heard of. And the buildings are all still there. There were some that got torn down that I could not write about because I wanted them to be specifically, ones that people could still go gawk at, which is what makes them really worthy of being in the book. J.P. Boileau points out that CIMX is, in fact, the call letters to the 89X out of Windsor, Canada. And Windsor, of course, is the city right across the Detroit River from Detroit. So a lot of people who live in the Detroit area just think about running across the bridge, going to Windsor and coming back. Although nowadays it's a little bit more complicated because of customs and so on, TSA and so on. But in the old days, you could just go over there. They go, where are you from? You go, U.S. They go, go on. When you're coming back, you go, where are you from? U.S. Come on. And unless you did something really, really stupid, you could just cross the border almost as if there was no border there. So Daniel Kester grew up listening to KSYC AM. Ian Halujak sent an email. I am assuming that is the way we're going to buy a book. Ilya says, I'm actually a Finn, but from Sweden. Okay, I'll forgive you. I mentioned Ilya being from Finland, but the name is obviously Finnish, but I guess he lives in Sweden. And Sweden and Finland share a border, and they are neighbors. There have been times in the past that they didn't get along so well, but I know that a lot of Finns speak Swedish and a lot of Swedes speak Finn, and you'll also see Finns with Swedish names. And that's simply because it's going to happen with a lot of intermingling there across the border. Fred Stewart, hello, Steve from Ravenna, Ohio. Sir, thank you very much. I recognize the name and I recognize Ravenna because I got a box from you yesterday at my P.O. box. And thank you very much. A lot of neat stuff in there. And I will follow the instructions explicitly. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then Graham is checking in, also from Australia. Did I miss? Hang on. It jumped on me. It jumped on me. Graham Pauly, morning from Sydney, Australia. Thank you for checking in. Thank you. Freddie Schaefer. Freddie's not a man. Schaefer. Hey, Steve, good Sunday morning. One day closer to another 4 years from Texas. One day closer to another 4 years from Texas. It's a mystery there, I suppose. Carl's Corner, realtors love the book. The question is, do the people who still live in the homes like the book? I don't know. I talked to a couple of them, I didn't talk to. What can I tell you? You know, hey, the book is a famous landmark. The houses are famous landmarks. I mean, I'm not the one who made the house famous. You know, on the cover of the book is the house from, of course, the movie, right? And so most of these houses would have people gawking at them, whether or not there's a movie made about the house or whether or not there's a book made about the house. The Amityville Horror House right there. But, you know, so what can you do? Jim Garrick, hello, Steve, from sunny and warm Southern California. I suspect you don't hit the CH in your name as hard as I just hit it there, and I apologize. Donald Norby says, hey, I'm living in a murder house because I'm killing time. Or as Stiff Records said on one of their T-shirts, when you kill time, you murder success. There you go. I wish they had something a little bit better through to read this, to read the talk on the side here without once in a while it jumps on me. I can't get where I'm going. Keith Size, I didn't know you wrote a book on the Calumet Italian Hall Massacre. Yeah, Death's Door, which is actually one of the first books I ever wrote about the Italian Hall disaster. It's also the thickest book I ever wrote. But I've been fascinated by that event ever since I heard about it as a child. And it happened in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, so it's local to me as well. G. Vogt checking in from Albuquerque. I apologize, sir. I've not read your book yet. I'm getting to it though. It's on the list. I'm plowing through books right now. It's scaring even me. Johnny Knoxville. I drove past Dahmer's apartment back in 1992. I had just gotten my license. I believe the building's gone now, though, right? There's that one, and also the John Wayne Gacy house, which doesn't exist anymore, along with the Ed Gein house, does not exist anymore. Ed Gein house didn't exist for very long after he got arrested. He got arrested, and that house burnt down really fast. So that happens. JP says, I've been waved through many times the Canadian border, renting a garage from a farmer in upstate New York, and was working on my own Jeep. I suspect it has to do with how busy the border crossing is, and also whether you get to know the people there. Because obviously, if they know who you are, they're not going to mess with you. It's the question of whether they recognize you or not. Paul Lemke, hey, the Lions are losing to the Packers today. I wouldn't be surprised. Someone pointed out that they do, in fact, have a game today that conflicts with my show. The Lions, didn't they win last week? They finally fired their head coach, but until they get serious, they're gonna have problems. And so don't get your hopes up. Valerie Rogers just got here. Are you talking about haunted houses? Sort of. I'm talking about my book, American Murder Houses. I have a case of them, which I'm getting rid of right now. It's a fire sale. All books must go. So, Dixie Champagne, how about next week's show? Will you be preaching the gospel on solstice/Festivus? Oh, that'll be really close to the day, won't it? Yeah. Exactly. Every year I tell myself I'm going to buy a Festivus poll, and I always forget, and I don't buy one in time. There are entire websites devoted to it, though. So they call me too. First time catching you live. Well, thank you for checking in, my friend. I appreciate it. We've got 250 people here right now. It's not bad. Dixie Champagne points out that when Matt Stafford gave an interview, he couldn't stop grinning after the firing of the head coach. Oh, that's sad. Rico Ruomaki says, I could be wrong, but officially Finland is not considered part of Scandinavia. And that's technically correct. And I've never understood this myself, but they'll tell you that Finland is not part of Scandinavia, but I believe Denmark is. And so most Americans just think of that group of three countries there, Norway, Sweden, Finland, as being Scandinavia. And that's not actually it. It's Sweden, Norway, and then the ones that are down across the sea there on mainland Europe. And again, I don't know who makes these definitions up or not, but I know that I've had people say specifically, Finland is not Scandinavia. But, something, it's one of those things, it's a distinction I'm not sure that really matters all that much. Johnny Knoxville says that the murder that took place in his buddy's apartment was actually involving a bow and arrow. Wow. DePaul 31 says we might have to wait for the airing of the grievances around Festivus. I got a problem with a lot of you people. Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, I'm looking for an internet bride from Sweden. Matt, Iceland is part of Scandinavia, isn't it? I believe it is. But again, that might be because their connection to is Denmark. Iceland has got a connection with Denmark. I actually just read the biography of Bobby Fischer by Frank Brady called Endgame. And if you have any interest at all in historical biographies or chess, it's a fascinating book. He wrote a biography of Bobby Fischer back in the 70s called Profile of a Prodigy. But the book is amazing, and you don't have to understand the game of chess to appreciate it. But Bobby Fischer passed away in Iceland. He had some trouble with the U.S. government, to put it lightly, and he got arrested in Japan. And to get out of a Japanese jail cell, he got Icelandic citizenship from the nice people of Iceland, and then lived out the last of his years in Iceland. And so it's interesting because Iceland will almost forever be tied to the history of chess and also Bobby Fischer in particular. So Scott Wojo, watch Life of Boris on YouTube. Is that about Boris Spassky? Retired Butcher Boy, sorry I'm late. Hey, no one's ever late. If you show up, you're on time. Ilya says the distinction is that Finland is part of Scandinavia, but not on the Scandinavian peninsula. I've never heard that distinction made before, but again, like I said, I'm not sure these distinctions matter all that much unless you're actually talking about somewhere with a definition like tied into a law or something. Elias Whitmer, good afternoon from Buffalo. When I was 16, I flew into Toronto from California with my little brother. We were traveling alone with no passports. Oops. Good thing I had my driver's permit, ID. Yeah, and that's the thing is that in America and Canada, you could cross that border all the time and just have identification. A driver's license would do it. Now they want you to have a passport. But in the old days, there were times where you could cross the border and not have anything. They wouldn't ask to see it. You just say, I'm an American. They look at your car, it's got American plates. They go, go ahead, we don't care. So David C. Allen checking in from Eagle, Idaho. Thank you for checking in, my friend. Tommy Barrio says Minnesota is little Scandinavia. And I believe there's also a little Finland up there somewhere too. J. Paul, how many different places on Mackinac Island make their own brand of fudge? All I know is, for those of you who aren't familiar, Mackinac Island is a small island between the upper and lower peninsula, the Mitten and the upper UP. And it's visible from the Mackinac Bridge, and you go out there and it's a quaint little island. There's a little town out there, and there have been people there, white people, European descendants from about the 1600s. And it's a great little tourist destination, but for whatever reason, someone started making fudge back there. I'm guessing in the 1900s. I saw a story about it, but they have ever since become known as just like the fudge capital of the world. And there's places also in Mackinac City that make fudge, and it's spread out a little bit. But there are actually shops specialized and sell nothing but fudge, and they're up and down the main drag. It's like every other place is a fudge shop. And it's one of those things where you buy the custom fudge, you take like 3 bites, and you're on a sugar buzz. You're done. It's expensive too. Oh boy. Riku says, Steve, Finland, before becoming an independent country, used to be under Swedish rule, then part of Russia. We got our independence in 1917. There's a minority of Finland and Swedes here. Yeah, I know about that. Many of the people in the room don't, and many of them might not care so much. But Finland, as a people, are the people who occupy what is now Finland and speak Finnish, okay? And over the centuries, they've had different countries that controlled them. And at one point in time, they were part of Sweden. At one point in time, they were part of Russia. At one point in time, Russia gave them some sort of autonomy, but not quite. And then in 1917, they declared their independence, and they basically got it, and they've been a country ever since. So as you can imagine, 3 years ago was their centennial, and it was a big. Every beach town along the Oregon coast has fudge shops also. Yeah, I wonder, maybe fudge is now popular in all kinds of places. It's just, I know that in Michigan, the fudge all comes from Mackinac Island. So Donald Norby is Scandinavian. From which country, though? Which country is Norby from, I wonder? Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Independence Day for Finland was not that long ago. By the way, somebody asked me a moment ago if the Canadian robot lady is here, and she is, in fact, here. She just checked in. Good morning from frozen Canada. Bill McMahon says, I went to Mexico with a birth certificate in 1979, was 16, didn't have a learner's permit, and therefore, what would you use if you didn't have a passport? So there you go. Interesting. Ronald Knight, hey, Steve. San Antonio says hello. Johnny Knoxville, Dixie Champagne. The Apostle Islands are fun. The Apostle Islands are a group of islands in Lake Superior off of a little point in Wisconsin that are fascinating. I think it's a national park. It's a national park or state park, but it's some of the most beautiful scenic islands that you're ever going to see anywhere. So it's very, very cool. Donald Norby says Norby is from Norway. I could have guessed that, obviously, but nowadays you don't know. Oh, boy. Canadian robot lady is having internet connection problems, so she'll be here when possible. Understandable. Bob Loblaw is checking in from Cincinnati. Permission to come aboard, sir. Thank you very much. And FDSS, hey, Steve Lehto, good afternoon. Johnny Knoxville, Mackinac Island produces 10,000 pounds of fudge per day in tourist season. It would surprise me. Oh, boy. Yeah, I've been to Mackinac Island, not every year for the last few years, but almost every year. And there's a lot of neat stuff out there. The history is amazing, and that's the island where there's no automotive presence. There's no cars, except for, I think they've got a couple of fire trucks and maybe an ambulance, but there are no cars. Main Street is foot traffic, horse traffic, and bicycles. And it's a throwback to an older, simpler time. And a major portion of the movie Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve was shot there. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it. So it's pretty cool. Check it out. Lee Harvey points to the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island has a dress code. Inappropriate attire is frowned upon. You'll be asked to leave. Yes, especially at dinner time and in the dining room. But if you walk in with t-shirt and shorts, they will not seat you in the dining room after a certain time. And Somewhere in Time, that's the building they used to shoot much of the movie was the Grand Hotel. And that's the building you can see from the Mackinac Bridge. The Grand Hotel is that grand. You can see it probably from space also. So Diana SF Ing, hello, Steve Lehto, and all in the chat. James Davis says, I refuse to accept your authority unless you wear a t-shirt. Is it really the shirt or is it the man behind the shirt? And Steamman Norfolk says, Liverpool have just equalized. Who are they playing? I think you mentioned earlier, but I missed it. The chat was going by too fast. RW Monday says, Tabasco sauce is made on Avery Island, Louisiana, which does not allow motorcycles on the island. I saw a documentary. I forgot all about this. You just said it now. I saw a documentary about the family. It's a family that makes Tabasco sauce, right? Like there's one big family that makes it all, and it's coming back to me now, but it's pretty amazing. Lon Denard says, "What's this stream about?" I should make up something, but I'm not that good at it. Every Sunday, starting at 1:00 Eastern time, I sit down and chat for an hour and a half or so. We talk about whatever pops into our heads. I do videos 2 a day otherwise. And so I generally talk about things in the news, legal stuff, consumer protection stuff, and car stuff. So Sundays basically we come and unwind. But this particular show, I'll mention it again. My publisher called me and said, hey, Steve, you can get a discount better than your normal discount. I said, great. I got a book called American Murder Houses. That's 51 of them right there. This is number 52 right here. I bought a case of them at a very large discount and said specifically that if you want a copy of this book for less than it costs on Amazon Prime, I'll hook you up $15. Email me. My email's in the description below the video. Email me. I will invoice you via Square. I'll sign it for you, and I'll mail it to you any place in the U.S. Can't do it outside of the U.S., but within the U.S., where many of you are, I can get it to you. I've also got copies of my other books. I've got a few of them as well. So if you wanted a copy of the Italian Hall book, that's this one right here. Douglas Houghton, Michigan's Columbus, right there. Chrysler's Turbine Car, right there. And the Preston Tucker book, right there. I got those as well. So just put an email, send it to me. And once they're gone, they're gone. So Lisa Chrétien says the Tabasco factory makes 700,000 bottles per day. I know the bottles are small, but that's a lot of bottles. Yeah, Mark Sparks points out, and someone else pointed it out too, maybe in Chevy Mustang, that when Mike Pence came to Mackinac Island, they brought a motorcade with them. And I did a video about that. I got a ton of flack from people who thought I was being political. But the point is that other people have come to the island who are important, who actually still honored the no vehicle thing. The island is so small that the distance from the landing, if you took a boat over, is, I mean, the buildings are all right there. And I believe if they wanted to, they can land a helicopter on the front lawn of the Grand Hotel, which is where they're going to be anyways. They could just land there and walk inside. But I'm not going to get political today. So there you go. G Vogt, can I just send you a check for a copy of the Tucker book? If you don't want to do Square, I hate to say this because it's going to create a ton of work for me. As you can imagine. Putting all that together is going to be a lot of work. But hey, if you want a book and for whatever reason you haven't got a credit card or whatever, email me directly, ask, just say, hey, can I send you a check? We'll work something out. I've done that before, but my goal is I want to get rid of these books. June at 483, I forgot that you were in Jay Leno's garage for the turbine car. Yes. And by the way, turbine car is behind these books. I just had to make space for the books. Jay Leno's got a turbine car, and he wrote the foreword for my book. So it says Steve Lehto right there, Steve Lehto with a foreword by Jay Leno. So he was kind enough to do that for me, and he's kind enough to let me drive his car. So here's the mental image for you. Steve Lehto driving a turbine car, Jay Leno in the passenger seat. There you go. So Jared Draper, hello. Hello, Jared. Media Watch. Hey, Steve, fellow broadcaster here. Are you on Discord? We can all gather and rag chew on the broadcasting server. I am not. I'll be honest, I don't even know what that is. Every now and then someone will throw out something and go, hey, have you heard about this new thing? TikTok. I don't know. Jeff, just got here. Which book? The book we're talking about primarily is American Murder Houses. My publisher said because of the holidays and whatnot, I can have a discount bigger than my normal discount. I got a case of them right there. So until they're gone, and then once they're gone, it's over. FDSS, does Square do debit? As long as it's like a MasterCard or a Visa debit card, yeah, all day long. All day long. Mike Geertz, I like Jay Leno's pandemic series videos. You know it's good when he wants to put it on the lift and show off the underside. Yeah, it's funny because Jay Leno has a TV show, Jay Leno's Garage on CNBC, I think. And, you know, he does short seasons that are 8, 10 episodes. And those are heavily edited with guests, and they go around and do all kinds of stuff. But he's got an internet show that he also does. And he literally just brings in, I think, one guy with a camera and just shoots these things. And they're really, really simple. They're not heavily produced, but they don't need to be. And that's one of the things that when I heard he's going to have a TV show, I thought, well, that's cool. I like the idea that his show's going to get a broader audience. But once the networks get involved, they want you to do things to appeal to more people. And you can tell by who his guests are that the network people have said, hey, look, can you maybe bring this person on or maybe bring this person on? And when he's left to his own devices, it's him in a huge garage walking around cool cars going, hey, let's and he's just talking about what he wants to talk about. It's absolutely fascinating. And he's got, I saw an article a couple days ago that actually gave the exact population of his garage right now. It's like 170 cars and 120 motorcycles. It's probably changed since then. And he's got all these cars. When I was in his garage, I've been there twice, walking through, you can point to anything and go, what's the deal with that car there? And he'll tell you, go, oh, I bought that car from this guy and it does this. And the reason it's interesting. And you might go, well, that's not that hard to do. For 170 cars, it would be. And I mean, we were walking along and I saw a crankshaft on the floor of the building where they do all the work. I jokingly said, what's that crankshaft to? And he told me. And he's going, yeah, we're rebuilding an engine over there. And he explained the whole thing to me. So it was an awesome experience. But if there's anything about cars and you're doing searches on YouTube and a Jay Leno video pops up and he's talking about that car, watch it. Because it's amazing to see him talk about that. Blaze and Cyrus, can you bundle the Chrysler book in with the murder book and sign them both? Of course. Until they're gone, yes. Guy Lee, did you drive any other of his cars? No, I did not. I got a ride in another car of his. Which, for people who've seen the airplane movies, will get the joke here, but we were just coming back to the garage in the turbine car, and he casually says to me, he goes, Steve, have you ever had a ride in a steam car? I looked at him and I go, of course not. He goes, would you like to go for one? I said, sure. So we jumped in his, I think, 1908 white steam car, And by the way, you don't just jump in the thing, drive off. You've got to do things like put water in it, fire up the pilot light, do all kinds of plumbing underneath. We went for a drive. We're driving around Burbank on a Saturday afternoon, 100-year-old steam car. It was one of the most amazing things. I'm in the back seat watching. There's another guy with us who's a photographer friend of mine. I'm in the back seat watching, and that thing's got like, I believe the accelerator is on the steering wheel. So to drive it, you need, and then there's pedals you push depending on which cylinder's making the steam. I mean, it's just a whole different experience. So, James E. Booth the third. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. Well, thank you for stopping by. These shows would be impossible without people in the room. Brack Cooley, cars are cheaper than divorces. And I can tell you, by the way, for those of you who are curious, Jay Leno is married, and he's been married for like 40 years. And it's just one of those things where the type of person he is, that his wife has just chosen to be kind of low key and not out in the limelight. And they've got a great marriage, and he's got a huge car collection. So something is going right there. Matawar, how much is the Chrysler book? The Chrysler Turbine Car book is $15. $15. Jim Jenkins, your channel is fantastic, a treasure, and I thank you for the content. Well, I thank you. Charles Black, don't call me Shirley. Oh, Shirley, you jest. Daniel Kester, Mr. Leno has several steam cars. Yes, he does. And he's fascinated. He's actually got like a fetish about steam cars. He loves steam cars. So along with the Doble steam car he's got a big steam tractor. One of those big antique tractors with the metal wheels. And then he's got a later version. The white steam car is one I mentioned. He's got a Doble steam car, which is the more like, looks like a Rolls Royce almost, but it was later, I'm guessing 30s, really, really high quality coach work and so on. But it had a really, really high efficiency boiler in it. And it could go from cold to steam so fast that it was actually not that big of a deal. Because that's one of the biggest concerns was in the old days, earlier on, you couldn't just jump in a steam car, hit the key and take off. You had to wait till it built steam. And the later Dobles had actually solved many of those problems. And he's got a whole bunch of them. And here's the thing. It's not enough to have the cars, and it's not enough just to appreciate the cars, but you got to keep them running. And so Jay's actually got a whole staff of guys who work with him, and his mechanics actually know how to work on steam cars. Chevy Mustang suggests that Jay's marriage is successful because he's always out in the garage. That very well could be. That very well could be. Oh. Michael Goodwin says, Steve, I just watched the Facebook post lawsuit video. I'll do you a favor. Avatar is basically Pocahontas with $1 billion budget. And instead of new land being the East, it's a new planet. There you go. One sentence. No need to watch it now. I kind of got that impression, but I don't know why. It just didn't do it for me. And I remember talking to somebody and I said, yeah, I've tried watching it. And they're like, and not every movie appeals to everybody. It might seem like it, but not all of them do. So American-made jewelry from Dobie's Designs. Sounds like Jay needs a staff writer and attorney. If he did, he'd know who to call. But, what can I tell you? Lemsey points out that I work on steam cars would look great on a resume. Yeah, well, imagine if you were filling out a resume as a mechanic and you said, I'm a fully certified master mechanic with a lot of experience working on, and you started rattling off all the things. And somewhere down at the bottom, it's, Doble steam engines, Joel Kirschman says there are a lot of good movies that I don't like, such as The Lord of the Rings, which is basically 12 hours of people walking. I watched the first Lord of the Rings and I just didn't quite get it. But I'll also admit, like, for instance, a lot of the live action comic book stuff, I liked the original, the first time they did Batman with Michael Keaton. And then from that point forward, they just seemed to go downhill. And I quit. I quit watching those a long time ago also. So, but Lord of the Rings, I saw either the first one or possibly the first two. But beyond that, I was done. Tommy Barrios says that Jay's Harley collection is the largest in the world next to Harley Davidson's own collection. Wouldn't surprise me. What's deceptive about it is that when you look at his car collection, he's got rooms and rooms filled with cars, and he does have one section that's a lot of bikes, but the bikes can be packed in closer. And so if you, like, I'm not a bike guy, so I don't recognize motorcycles as quickly as some other guys might. And then he's got some that are scattered about throughout the rest of his collection. And so I recognize he had a bunch of like World War II stuff and earlier, but then he also had a lot of the later stuff. And I'm like, but because you can fit them in smaller spaces, you don't realize there are as many there as there really are. So, Mark Heil, Jay Leno is an owner of an early 1900s electric car. Yes. And what he's got is he's probably got several electric cars. But he's got an electric car from the early 1900s. I'm guessing around like 1905, 1910. I forgot the exact year. But it basically looks like a big phone booth. It's a glass enclosure, almost like, imagine like a stagecoach with all windows. Like the coach, maybe Cinderella would take the ball like that, okay? And put four wheels on it. And then there's a seat inside of it. And underneath, of course, is a battery and motors. Batteries and a motor. And it has, I believe, a tiller for steering. And at one point in time, they were building charging stations throughout New York City and other major cities to where you could drive your electric car in, charge it while you're shopping, and then drive home. And battery technology 100 years ago was really, really bad compared to today. So that idea didn't take off because of the range issues and the recharging issues. But I read the book Driven about the early history of Henry Ford. It's a fascinating book if you like history books, especially automotive history books. And they talk a lot in there about how they were trying to figure out what was going to be the dominant technology. And there was a point in time where people thought that electric cars would be the big deal because if they could only get around that. So companies had come up with, for instance, making interchangeable batteries. So that, you could drive someplace and instead of charging the battery, they could pull the battery out and drop in a charged one for you. And there were taxi companies that were planning on doing that. But as we know, they didn't wind up becoming the dominant form. But so Jay's got one of those. So it's a very, very cool car to look at. And it's like, wow, very, very neat. Matthew Shostrom says Finland Russian instead of Scandinavian. Well, Finland, of course, would just be part of Europe. And at one point in time, they were part of Russia, but not anymore. They've learned to get along with each other to some extent. Yeah, Junit 483 says it says Baker Electric, and Robert Hodges says Franklin Electric. And then JP says it's a Baker. Yeah, I don't know. I forgot the brand name of it. And believe it or not, there's a company called, I believe, Detroit Electric that made electric cars in Detroit a long, long time ago. So there were a lot of companies making electrics, but the question, like I said, was they just didn't have the battery technology at the time. JJCEO 40, does Jay have a Yugo in his garage? I don't remember seeing one. You can go to Jay Leno's garage. I think he's got a website just called Jay Leno's Garage. I don't know if it's that .com or what, but Google it and you'll find. And he has a lot of his cars. You can look at the photographs. He's got a lot of unusual stuff in there, but he doesn't have everything. I mean, obviously with under 200 cars, you can't have them all. But it's surprising what he does have. He doesn't have a Tucker either. And he also does not have a winged car. At last I heard, he does not have a Daytona or a Superbird. But he's got some very, very cool cars. So, Rick L., hello from Victoria, BC. Thank you for checking in, my friend. D. Wood, Jay Leno also has a Packard Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, quite a sight to see running. He's actually got a car that's got one of those engines in it also. And I think he might have more than one of those engines, but he has a video where they have the engine set up on a stand outside the garage and he just fired it up. And that's really, really cool. Don Store, hi, Steve. Glad I didn't miss you. I'm glad you checked in. Stephen Shaw says Elon Musk originally wanted Tesla to use battery exchanges, but soon realized the practical pitfalls and developed the supercharging network instead. Yeah, and it's interesting because even the Tucker, the Tucker was designed to where the engine could be pulled very, very quickly. And at one point in time, Tucker was actually telling people that one of the advantages of his design was that the engine could be removed so easily that if you ever brought it in for repair, rather than tearing your engine apart and rebuilding it, they would just yank yours, drop in a new one, and send you on your way. But they never got that far. So Michael Delaney checking in from Alaska. Hello. Thank you for checking in. Daniel Kester says Jay Leno also has a radial airplane engine. I don't remember seeing that, but it doesn't surprise me. He's got some other stuff. He's fascinated not just by automobiles, but all things that are mechanical and motive. Is that the right word? So motors, engines. He's got a big, someone else mentioned it also, he's got a big steam engine like plant that was apparently part of like, I think a mining operation out west. And he had it brought to his garage and they tore it apart and put it together again. And it's just a steam engine that drives a big wheel that was designed to be running other stuff. So Malice Min says, hey, Steve, why do you have 50 copies of the same book? Also, the Dodge Viper came in orange. Two things. One is I got a case of these from my publisher because I got a discount, so I'm going to sell them. I'm passing the savings along to you. Number two, the fact that the orange was available on a Viper doesn't mean anybody should have ordered it that color. I didn't care for the orange on the Viper. There were a few cars, but not that many. Big Rig Rex, my kid is being sued by a person and her husband that she rear-ended. And she has no insurance, no money, and no assets. What should she do? I assume you mean that it's your daughter who's being sued because she rear-ended somebody else, but your daughter has no insurance, no money, and no assets. Consult with a local attorney. Because in some states, if you cause an accident, you don't have insurance, that can be really, really bad. On the other hand, if you get hit with a judgment like that, you might be able to discharge bankruptcy. I don't know. It depends on the state you're in and so on. I'd go take a look at that, but certainly talk to an attorney. The last thing you want to have happen is to get hit with a default judgment and have somebody chasing you. So go talk to an attorney, even if it costs money up front. It's better to talk to an attorney and figure this stuff out now and be out a few $100s than it would be to not do anything and find out later you got hit with a judgment for $100 grand. Bill Bishop's off to work. Thank you for checking in, my friend. I appreciate that. Michael Butler, does a stepchild remain your stepchild after a divorce? To be honest with you, I don't know if there's actually a rule on that or if it's more a matter of simply what the divorced people decide to do with respect to how they label these things. And again, I don't do divorce or family work, and there's a reason why it gives me a headache thinking about it. So, G Keyman 565. Hi, Steve. Just woke up in time to catch your live. Well, I appreciate that. Pine Soul, craziest outfit you've seen a defendant show up to court in. Defendants do show up in court from time to time dressed poorly simply because they got picked up off the streets, never had a chance to change, and then got dragged into court that way. That's not uncommon. Craziest things is when you see attorneys dressed weirdly. And there have been a couple attorneys who made it their trademark to wear outlandish suits in court, colorful suits of many colors. And I've seen them, and hey, it's a suit. The man's got $1,000 suit on, or maybe more, I don't know. And a pair of matching shoes, and maybe even a walking stick, something. No one's gonna tell me you can't go into court like that. But I've mentioned before, I've actually seen a guy standing in court before wearing a shirt that said, "I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you?" And he had an attorney. And I wanted to go up to the attorney and go, dude, are you out of your mind? Either tell your client to turn that shirt inside out or lend them a shirt or do something. But that ain't helping any. Now, the judge seemed to be okay with it, but I can picture in the back of his mind, he's going, this is a guy who cares so little about the court. It didn't even occur to him to look in the mirror before he came here. So, mind bend. I like your background. You have room for more? Yeah, there's a dead spot right here on the wall and a little bit of dead spot here. Maybe some room over here. And someone actually said to me, and I understand this is going to throw me a little bit out of kilter to do this, but somebody actually said, Steve, those law books don't actually belong there because you don't use them anymore. And I like to always say, I don't make this stuff up. It's in the law books, the blue ones behind me. What I might do is drop the law books down a shelf and then make that into like a diorama for more of the detailed stuff like this tube and that microphone, that kind of stuff. So we'll see, but it's a work in progress. Lee Harvey, Jackie Childs always dressed accordingly. Yes, he did. Dixie Champagne, ACLU lawyer Bruce Harvey was well known for his ponytail and his loud neckties. Used to see him at lunch all the time. Yeah, I remember there's always guys who had signature things they would do. I remember a guy, an older gentleman who used to tan to where his skin was so dark, he obviously went to a tanning salon. And he'd always wear light colored suits, and then he'd always wear an actual flower, like a carnation or something. And he must have had a supply of them or something, and he'd show up in court like that. And the first thought was, oh, it's the tan guy with the flower. And it was just his trademark. I've seen lawyers with ponytails. I mean, that's a common one. And then, of course, I can tell you that there was an attorney in Michigan who was actually, I believe his office is in Walled Lake, very, very well-known attorney, who was famous for, at sentencing, putting on a big show and actually dropping to his knees in front of the bench and pleading with the judge to go easy on his client. And the first time you see it, it's embarrassing. The second time you see it, you want to go, dude, stand up. But he did that and his clients loved him for it. So I guess that worked. Oh boy. I had that happen where something went by and my brain said make a note and it didn't make a note. So Robert leases steam engines produce 100% of their torque at 0 RPMs. They also have power strokes in both the up and down strokes. Very cool. I also know that that's true of electric motors. Monster torque at 0 RPM. And so it creates some different kinds of power curves and so on. D. Wood, on that note, Steve, what tips would you give on dressing to someone who has to go to court? I say to people, dress as if you are going to church. If that makes sense to you, if you don't go to church, then I suppose I should say dress like you're going to a wedding or a funeral. But then I realize I've seen people who dress badly for those too. There's a saying called Sunday best. But generally speaking, for guys, minimum shirt with a collar and a tie. And if you got a jacket, wear a jacket, suit coat. Women, it's the equivalent. And there's a fine line between dressing appropriately and dressing inappropriately for women. But I think women have a little more leeway. But keep in mind that you don't want your outfit to be a distraction. If anything, you want your outfit to do nothing but help you blend in and make it look like you put in an effort. I've mentioned before, a very good friend of mine in law school is now a very, very famous attorney in Minneapolis. And he does criminal defense work. And early on, he was called in on a case where he's going to be a court-appointed attorney for a guy who was in jail. And he went in, talked to the guy, made all the arrangements. They're getting ready to go into their first hearing in court. And my friend says, by the way, do you have any other clothes? And the guy looks at him. He's like, no, I'm in jail. What do you? You're an attorney. You should realize this. And he goes, but do you know anybody? Can somebody bring you something? And the guy goes, I'm really sorry, I can't. My friend went out to his car. He'd just come from the cleaners. Went out to his car and grabbed a shirt that was still on the hanger with the plastic on it. It had just been cleaned and pressed. And he walked in and he holds it up to the guy and he goes, that'll fit you, right? And the guy goes, yeah. And he goes, there you go. Wear that. And so the next day when they're in court, his client's standing next to him with a freshly pressed, bright white, extremely expensive dress shirt, buttoned up to here. I forgot if he had a tie or not. But I jokingly said, I go, did you ever get that shirt back? And he goes, no. So Daniel Kessler, what about the guy who wears the bright yellow tux with dollar signs all over it? Would that be appropriate in court? Are you referring to Lesko? There's a guy named Lesko who writes books about how you can get money from the government. And he always runs around on TV wearing a suit with dollar signs on it. Malice Min, is it a mistake not to wear the tie? If you got a tie, wear one. If you don't, you can get away without one. But attorneys can't. Let's put it that way. An attorney, you better be wearing a tie. I mean, wear the tie. Bender Fender, do you watch any car-centric YouTube channels? When they pop up, I don't subscribe to any, though. And I watch Jay Leno all the time. But, Chad Purling, ever see a lawyer in an orange suit? I don't think I have. Daniel Kessler, yeah, Matthew Lesko. Free money. Fred Stewart points out that the jail suits are often orange, so you might not want to be wearing that in court. Matthew Shostrom, have you ever seen somebody who gets tongue-tied or the mental lockup in front of a judge? Not really. And that's interesting you asked that because you'd think so, but no. Most attorneys, when they go into court, even if they're not planning on reading something, will still have notes in front of them or something that'll remind them of what they want to say. And I've seen an attorney get up and start talking, doing really, really well, and all of a sudden get stuck. But once they're stuck, they can walk over and go, oh, okay, well, and they can refresh their memory. But not that bad, no. Carson Keller, have you ever watched Hoovie's Garage? I've seen a couple episodes. I've seen him. I've also seen like Sam Crack, who buys the wrecked cars and fixes them. I watch those things from time to time, but just not on a regular basis. I haven't got time. Boycott watch. I once saw a public defender who needed the judge to help him speak. I've seen attorneys who are screwing things up badly, but it's never where they just forgot what to say. It's usually more on issues of procedure. And I've mentioned before the story where I saw an attorney who didn't know how to introduce evidence and got halfway through, and then he'd move on to the next one halfway through. And at the end of like all of these things, he goes, I'd like to have them all introduced. And the judge looks at the prosecutor, and the prosecutor goes, that's not how you do it. And the judge goes, yeah, we now need to go back to the beginning and start over. I mean, it was just bad. So, Robert Penzick, is it true you hid the 100 in one of the red books and it's just luck of the draw to get it? No, but the hundo is near the books. Chevy Mustang, why do judges ask criminal defendants if their attorney is hired or assigned? I've never heard a judge ask that because judges would know. Judges would usually know because the assignments are done by the courts, at least in Michigan. And so when I, in the old days, used to do assignments, the court would contact me and say, hey, congratulations, you defend this guy now. I would come into court and the judge would open up the file and it would say right there, assigned attorney Steve Lehto. So, Paul Hacken, any deaf or disabled attorneys using devices? I don't know of any. I've seen a guy who's hard of hearing ask a court to give him, it's like a hearing aid that he can wear that pipes the sound from the sound system directly into the unit. I've seen that. And I've mentioned before, there was at least 2 and possibly 3 judges in Michigan who are blind. And the University of Michigan Law School actually has a program that's designed more so to be something that blind students could actually partake in. And so there were 2 judges I know of, and then also a judge right now in the Michigan Supreme Court who's a Bernstein, and he is blind, and he was an attorney for many, many years at the Bernstein law firm, and now he's in the Michigan Supreme Court, and he's blind. So, but not deaf. I've not encountered that I'm aware of. So, Donnie D, do you think some of those lawyers wear the bright or loud suits to distract their opponents? I suspect many of them are doing it because they want to be considered flamboyant and memorable and hope that other people will hire them as a result. But you never know. D. Wood, Justice Bernstein. And of course, we know that Justice is blind. The image of Justice, they always show Justice is usually holding scales in one hand and a sword in the other, and she's blindfolded. And so that's to indicate that she is going to treat everyone before her fairly and truly. So, James Davis, you consider Chrysler to be Italian and not American? You know, I still call it Chrysler. It's FCA, Fiat Chrysler. I know that they've got a lot of Italian in them now. But, you know, I still think of them as being an American company, but who knows what they are really, you know? Carson Keller, if you had a blind judge, can you wear what you want? That's an interesting question. And I'll tell you that a very good friend of mine had an extremely complicated criminal trial in front of a blind judge. And a court reporter is writing down everything that everyone says in the courtroom. And that's one of the reasons that attorneys will do things like, I'm holding in my right hand a coin that is a Walking Liberty $50 dated 1941. It's been marked for identification purposes as plaintiff's exhibit number 1. I'm going to hand it now to the defendant. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes, you may. I'm going to hand this now to you. Can you tell me what that is? Now, in real life, I can simply walk and go, what's this? But the record wouldn't show what was happening. So you have to narrate what you're doing for the purposes of evidence. And so it becomes painfully clear that when you're in front of a blind judge, the same thing is even more true because things are happening in the courtroom and all he can do is hear it. So my friend had a case where they were disputing what had happened when someone got patted down. And the police officer said, I can demonstrate. So the prosecutor stood up and the police officer said, okay, lean over, do this, do that. And my friend had to say, excuse me, just to make sure the record is clear, but also so the judge can understand, we need to slow this down a little tiny bit. And everyone is cool with it. But they had to go down with, I'm leaning forward, my hands are here, my feet are here, my feet are this, blah, blah, blah. And then the police officer is going, okay, I'm taking my right hand here. And they had to walk through it extremely detailed. And the interesting thing is that on appeal, if you took it up on appeal, the Court of Appeals can only read what happened because back then there weren't videotapes to show. And even then a videotape is not necessarily as good as the written record. So it's crazy. D. Wood, another legal question. Steve, is there a principle in the law called an attractive nuisance? By the way, Craig Alston in Bay County was the blind judge. Thank you very much. I'd forgotten his name. Judge Tyrannus, Paul Tyrannus, was the judge in Wayne County. Craig Alston was in Bay County. I've been in front of both of them. Okay. And Craig Alston, that was about 20 years ago, I was in front of him. But an attractive nuisance is the idea that there are certain things that will cause trouble if you simply leave them by themselves. So a construction site, if you have a construction site that you're working on at the end of the day and you go home, kids are going to come by and go, hey, a construction site, we can play here. We can climb all over and kids get hurt. So they would suggest to you for your construction site to put a fence around it to keep people out. And the theory of that is called an attractive nuisance. And it's not that it's a nuisance by itself, but it's a nuisance in that it will attract certain kinds of people who could get harmed there. And so it's going to vary from state to state as to how serious they are about this. But there are situations where people have gotten injured in places and they've said, It's often children. They said the reason that kid got hurt is he saw this thing and like any other kid would do, went over and then got injured. And they take the attractive nuisance part of it and say that that's what puts the owner on notice that someone is going to get hurt. So if you have something like that, a swimming pool is another example. You put a fence around your swimming pool, number one, to keep children and dogs out, but number two, because it's tempting for people to come over and use it. And so, that's not so much, but it's usually the construction sites are often cited as an attractive nuisance. But you can imagine there probably are others. Tiff's Bikes, a pool is one. There you go. Carson Keller, a trampoline would be one. That's another one. And the scary part is that to look at trampolines nowadays compared to trampolines when we were kids, they've got like safety netting around them and stuff. Keith E., in the hotel business, a swimming pool is called an attractive nuisance. And that's the same thing. I'm surprised hotels have swimming pools in their premises because all you're asking for is a lawsuit. So Mice Elf, why is there a court stenographer rather than audio video recording? It seems out of date. Well, no, most courts now are using audio video recording, okay? But it still has to get reduced to a transcript because on appeal, you file a brief. And in your brief, you cite what happened in court. And you can't say, well, so-and-so said such and such, and you got that from the video. You have to have a court reporter who transcribes it all down and says, and so even though there are videotapes made, if you need a transcript, the tape gets sent to a transcriptionist or a stenographer, and a transcript gets made. And it seems very convoluted, but it makes sense. If I've handled appeals, I filed appeals with the courts of appeal in Michigan, federal courts, also Michigan Supreme Court, although they did not accept my appeal. And you are always citing things based on page number, line numbers in a transcript someplace. And if you're actually telling people like, oh no, go look at the 313 mark in the video and the guy says such and such, it's extremely cumbersome to do it that way. So American-made jewelry from Dobie's Design says, my oldest sister is an attractive nuisance. Metawar, how do you limit liability with pools and trespassers? Well, you have to do what you can, reasonably and with common sense. So you put up no trespassing signs, put fences around things. And the more effort they put in to overcome what you've put there, the harder it is for them to say, hey, it was an attractive nuisance. All I had to do was climb through the razor wire and ignore 6 signs. So D. Wood and several others have pointed out about Arlo Guthrie and Justice being blind and whatnot. So there you go. Michael Goodwin says, and our local courthouse charges an arm and a leg for a transcription copy. Oh, yeah, it's expensive. It's expensive. And that's the scary part. And I'm not saying that's right, but it'll be a couple bucks a page. And you'd be surprised how fast pages get burned up by attorneys who talk too slow. And I've had to order the transcript before of a trial. I'm trying to remember, a 1-day or 2-day trial. And it was like $600 for a transcript that came to be about that thick. I had another trial, a 3-day trial, transcript about that thick again. And I think it was $600 or $700. And the problem is you have to order it. You have to get it. And it's one of the costs of doing business, unfortunately. So Johnny Knoxville says that in Florida, if you cage your pool, the alligators will still break in. Yeah, and what you do then is you put up signs saying, beware of alligators. That would do it, right? Carson Keller, can you charge your clients for the transcript? Yes, the transcript is just one of the court costs. So when you talk to a client at the very beginning of a case and you're explaining to them how much it's going to cost them, you have to explain to them, look, I charge so much for the hourly time that I put in your file. There's going to be other costs, photocopies, postage, and if we have to hire experts, and then if we have to order a transcript. And so I've had to explain to a client of mine, like, if you want to appeal this, we can. And I think we got grounds for an appeal. But an appeal is going to cost you all of these things, plus just the transcript. And even a court reporter will give you an estimate. You can call up a court reporter and say, look, I might need a transcript of that trial. What's it going to cost me? Ballpark. And they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, here's what it's going to cost you. And by the way, if you call them and say, I want the transcript, they're going to say, we want money up front, 9 times out of 10, because they're scared of people ordering the transcript and backing out. Johnny Knoxville says the greatest travesty of his lifetime is that hotels and gyms have removed diving boards from the pools. Again, that's just an attractive nuisance. That's like a lawsuit looking to be filed. Okay. I've known people, somebody I know very well who was in pool class in junior high and did something, I forgot if he slipped or flipped or whatever, and he hit his head on the diving board and wound up getting stitches after he bled in the pool. And of course, that meant, I assume they had to I think they had to flush the pool. I mean, it's just a diving board. It's just, I haven't thought of one in so long, I'd forgotten about that. So, Galen Ursa, why do you have to get it on paper? Well, you've got to have a lot of stuff on paper just because electronic versions are a little skittish. Even in court, you get a judgment, you get a piece of paper. It's been stamped and signed. You can scan it later and make copies all you want, but the original paper is what you want. Doug Jones, don't leave a ladder up to your roof. Joel Kirschman, can't hotels just put up a sign stating proceed at your own risk? Depends on the state. It depends on the accident. So the first thing that happens is some little kid gets in there, gets hurt, and they go, well, he can't read. And you go, well, where were the parents? They say, well, the parents were checking in. The little kid ran off and got in there because the door was left open. I mean, I don't know. It happens. I know Johnny's going to ask. It's lemon lime. That is not green apple. Paul, have any clients offered bribes or inappropriate deals to a judge? Well, no, my clients don't talk to the judge except for when I'm standing right there in open court. But generally speaking, I've never actually encountered anybody doing anything inappropriate like that in anything that I've ever seen or heard. So, June at 43, Florida has signs that state don't molest the alligators. I'm not sure posting beware of gator would work in Florida. I've seen signs. I've been to Florida before, along with the low-flying owl sign. I've seen a sign saying, beware of alligators. It's like, oh, okay, thank you. Get about what email should I use to send you a tip on a story? I emailed you at Lehto's Law. That is the correct one. And that address is in the description below the video right now. Steve at Lehto'sLaw.com. Blues Coins. Afternoon, Steve. Afternoon, Blues. Thank you for checking in. Lemzia, what does a typical expert in a trial charge to testify? A lot. I've had mechanics charge me, and I've paid them $100 an hour. I've had doctors. I've seen doctors who want $750 an hour, and they'll actually give you minimums. They'll say like $750 an hour, minimum of 6 hours, that kind of thing. If they're going to sit in the hallway at the courtroom for half a day, they're going to charge you for that. It's crazy. The costs are insane, and they add up quickly. Michael Goodwin heading home. Well, if you're taking off, I appreciate the time you spent here. Paul Haken, what kind of interesting pro bono work have you done or heard of? Most of the work I've done pro bono just turned out that way. Meaning I had a client who either didn't pay me or a case settled right and said, I'll keep it. But I haven't been asked to do anything that unusual. But Chevy Mustang, anyone catch the video of the cigar smoker wrestling his puppy from the mouth of an alligator? Yes, I saw it. Go on the internet and type that in, cigar, puppy, alligator. And some guy, I didn't know if it was his or not, but an alligator grabbed the puppy and pulled it up. And so you see this guy walk into the water, reaches down into the water and pulls an alligator out of the water. He's like knee deep in the water. And he's got the alligator, and you realize the alligator's got a puppy in its mouth, and he's prying, and the puppy jumps out and runs. Like, the puppy's fine. It's just a crazy thing. America's Funniest Home Videos. Rational Bushcraft, you charge $140 per hour for IT work. Is that for expert work also, like if you're testifying in a court case? But that wouldn't surprise me at all. Patrick Squires, I know an expert on food containers, often claims on stacked food that fell over. Wow. Like supermarkets or warehouses, things like that, restaurants. You'd be surprised. You can find experts in almost any field. And they're crazy. Sarah Callahan confirms it was his puppy. David Hastings, I couldn't sell my house without a fence around my above-ground pool, which made for good target practice. Yeah, Mike Toth says Rockford Files. Mike, Jim Rockford often found himself do pro bono work, but not intentionally. Yeah, and if you saw Anatomy of a Murder, you'll recall that wound up being a pro bono case too. David Melbourne points out that Cigar Puppy Alligator is a great band name. Oh, boy. Jay Felix says the puppy was a King Cavalier Spaniel, which is worth between $800 and $1,200. Yeah, King Cavaliers they got a different looking face than a regular Cocker Spaniel. So, and Chevy Mustang says, yeah, he went completely under. And that's what I'm saying is I watched the video and I see the guy reach into the water and suddenly he pulls out the alligators. So that dog went underwater. Oh, D. Woods says, I asked about an attractive nuisance because a friend looked at some old cars alongside the road with no signage, and a guard dog came out and bit him. That's not so much an attractive nuisance as it's just an unleashed dog. Dog bites are a whole different ballgame. If a dog comes out and bites you, you want to find out who the owner is and then see how bad the bite is. Daniel Kester says Jim Rockford charged $200 per day plus expenses. I always liked that in the old detective cop movies. The guy'd always go like, "Here's what I charge, plus expenses." And the way they said it, you always realize like, oh wait, if they do this right, the expenses could dwarf, the hourly rate or daily rate. Alan Pruitt says, "Hey Steve, tooling down the highway in Indiana with 8,500 gallons of gasoline in tow. It's overcast and 38F. That sounds beautiful. It's 34F where I am right now, overcast. It's a little chilly out. It's gotten chilly. I did get the Viper out on Friday. It was in the 40s, but I'm sitting there. It's sunny out. It's in the 40s, but it's dry. It hasn't rained. It hasn't snowed. I mean, I called up a friend of mine and said, hey, want to go for a ride? So my friend Tom had not seen the Viper yet, so I took it over and took him for a ride. Oh, newsflash. Sorry I'm late. Digging out in Alpena. Yeah, the northern part of Michigan. Up here apparently got some snow, and Alpena, of course, is up here. So that happens. JJ CEO 40, have you ever performed a Rockford J in a car? That's where you do a hard turn and you get the car to spin around and take off again. No, I have not. Dixie Champaign, Indiana wants me, but R. Dean Taylor. Lord, I can't go back there. Bender Fender, I wonder if the Joe Dirt Daytona was real or modified. I believe it was modified, although it's one of those things. I've seen photographs at car shows that people have taken of a car which they claim is the Joe Dirt car. I don't know. So. David Melbourne says it was 50 degrees here in Port Huron Saturday. Port Huron is up here on the thumb, right across from Sarnia. Yeah, no, it was nice the last few days, but I know the snow hit you guys up north. Sorry about that. So, yeah, Austin Benesh points out that a truck near Las Vegas hit and killed several bikers, and it's just one of those crazy stories to read about. Very, very sad story, and it's terrible, terrible. The Golden Goats. Hi, Steve. Greetings from New York. Thank you for checking in, my friend. Robert Lee says the Joe Dirt Daytona was mint and dressed down for the movie. Well, the one I've seen at car shows still looks dressed down. I wonder, are those fakes or what's going on? Patrick Squires, I've learned so much from your channel. Big thanks from Oxford, Michigan. Well, thank you for checking in. Oxford's a neat little town, kind of north of Detroit a ways. A little bit rural. Very, very nice. I love to drive around out there. A lot of rolling hills and nice country roads. Diana SF Ing, have to go. Thank you all in the chat. Have a great Sunday. Thank you for checking while you were here. Carson Keller, have you ever been to East Lansing, Michigan? Yes, many times. Among other things, I took the bar exam in East Lansing. I often say Lansing. I know it's East Lansing. Lansing is the capital. East Lansing is where Michigan State University is. They're right next to each other. One is east of the other. But I've been there many, many times. A lot of stuff happens in Lansing with lawyers and the law and so on. So, Ronald Knight, hey Steve, San Antonio says hi. Had to step out for a bit. Blues Coins, 4 to 6 inches of snow in Oklahoma. Fun times with people that can't drive on dry roads. That's what I'm here to tell you is that, I'm good at driving in the snow. I don't mind driving in the snow. It's the other people out there who can't drive. And, I've got 2 Ford Explorers, so I pick which one I want to drive in that day if it's ugly out. But I'm fine. I'm worried about people sliding into me and so on. So, Donald Norby, goodbye till next week. Take care. You too, my friend. Bob Blah says, is the COVID vaccine close to you with armed guards? I don't know if you heard this or not, but one of the plants manufacturing the COVID vaccine is in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And Kalamazoo, Michigan is right about here. So it's one of those towns that they use it in a lot of big band songs because Kalamazoo rhymes with so much. It's fun to say. But I saw photographs. I saw footage actually of the trucks pulling out of the plant that full of vaccine, and there were actually people. There's police cars lining the road so they can get out, and people were there applauding, like, yes, about time. But that's in Kalamazoo, Michigan. JP, are your Explorers 4x4? One is not. But I'll take my 2x Explorer in the snow any day over a typical car. Great ground clearance. Plus, I just know how to drive it. So the old Explorer is 2x, but the new one is 4x4. So Carson Keller, driving in the ice is scary. Oh, icy roads are different. Snow-covered roads are just fun. So, John Michael MacArthur Jr. says, Steve, Commonwealth of Massachusetts checking in. My good friend John Michael. And it's funny. I talk to John all the time on Facebook, and here he is in the chat. And I know you watch a lot of the videos. I see you comment on the videos, and we chat all the time on Facebook. And I'm glad that you checked in here. It's the circle of life, my friend. So John and I are often comparing notes, life in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts compared to life in the great state of Michigan. DePaul 31, WKZO, Kalamazoo. I knew some people worked in radio in Kalamazoo back in the day. Boycott Watch asks, will people rob the vaccine warehouse the way they did the Quaalude warehouse? The problem with the vaccine is that you have to store it at a really, really, really cool temperature. And so if you're gonna nab that, you got to be, if you care, if you want to keep it useful, you'd have to keep it cold. Matt, I'm flying into Detroit next week and picking up a rental car. I've been to the former Palace and DTE, but is there any worthwhile sites I should see in Detroit or nearby? Okay, I'm not sure you'd mention the Palace or DTE because number one, the Palace is gone, obviously, but DTE is a outdoor amphitheater, which is only worthwhile if there's some playing there. What I'd recommend you do if you've got time, and if they're open, check, is the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, which is very, very close to Detroit. There's Greenfield Village, there's the museum, and they've got so much cool stuff there. Look it up. They got a website. I would check that out if you've never been there. And then, unfortunately with COVID, I'm not sure that everything is open or what's open or not these days. But generally speaking, people coming to Michigan who've never been here before, especially if you like cars, the Henry Ford Museum is absolutely at the top of that list. Aesop's Retreat says, you could hang each sword on hooks attached to the outside of each shelf, parallel to the shelf. You mean like on the shelf right here? It's got possibilities because there are 3 swords behind me. Unfortunately, one's blocked by the books right now, but there's one sword on this shelf and there's another sword over here. Those are 2 Civil War sabers and one's a World War I dress saber. I'm still looking at working on that. So D. Sherpke, hey Steve, it's 52F here in Massachusetts. A name I'm not even going to try. I have no idea how you pronounce that. It looks like Billerica, but it's probably pronounced like Smith. So David C. Allen, great show. Have to go. See you next Sunday. Thank you, my friend, for checking in. To Paul 31, the Ford Museum is fascinating. It's huge. It's huge. I mean, you could do Greenfield Village for a day and then do the museum for a day. But it's just amazing because they've collected so much stuff, and it's just one of those. They have a whole section on like steam engines and mechanical stuff. And they've got cars. They got trains. I was out there 4 years ago. And it had been a while since I'd been out there. I'm like, I forgot how cool this place was. So I liked it a lot. Oh, and by the way, they have a turbine car and a Tucker. I kid you not. They've got a turbine car and a Tucker right there, worth the price of admission. Bender Fender says you need a Gurkha kukri, which feels good in the hand. Are we talking about one of the big curved swords like you see in the movies? Yeah. Just haven't got one yet. Dixie Champagne, where's Tiger Stripes? I'm not sure. I also noticed a Canadian robot lady has stepped out. I suspect that her connection is not that good, if I had to guess. So JJ CEO 40, will the Ford family ever run out of money? That's a tough call because the Ford Foundation's got a lot of money also. And the Ford family still controls a huge chunk of the Ford stock. So although they are a publicly traded corporation, they are run a little differently. And you'll recall there's a time when Chrysler and General Motors got bailouts from the U.S. government, and Ford did not. And Ford had, number one, anticipated the financial troubles coming, but number two, and this is the important thing, they didn't want to lose control of the company. And they ran the risk of losing control of the company if they'd gotten the bailout the same way GM and Chrysler did. So they didn't do it. And so they managed to get along from there. Aesop's Retreat, I'd love to see a Tucker with a turbine. Believe it or not, they briefly toyed with the idea. There was a guy that Tucker hired to come in and work on the potential of a turbine engine in the car. It's about half a page in my book. John Dunn, any recommendations for touring the Upper Peninsula? It depends how much time you've got and what part of the year you're going to be up there. If you go in the summertime, which is where I'd recommend you go, Munising is beautiful. Grand Island is beautiful. You can get on a boat tour, see the pictured rocks, glass bottom boat tour, see boats in the bottom of the lake. I would recommend you get up to the Mackinac Peninsula, visit Copper Harbor, take a look at the various copper mines and so on. A lot of old towns up there. Tequamanon Falls over the east end are beautiful, worth an afternoon drive. The Sioux Locks are pretty cool. The Sioux Locks are where the gigantic ocean-going freighters come through. And I think it's like, I don't know, a 30-foot drop or something between Lake Superior and the St. Mary's River. And they've got the locks in there, and you actually watch a boat come in and get raised up and go through. Very, very cool. And of course, the west end, you got the Porcupine Mountains, some of the most scenic mountains of that type in the Midwest. Very, very cool. So I'd recommend that. It depends how much time you've got, because unfortunately, there's a lot of space between those different places. It's hard to see the Sioux Locks, Tequamanon Falls, Grand Island and Munising, Copper Harbor, and say the Porcupine Mountains without having 3 or 4 days to do it. So, retired butcher boy, I own Ford stock, and sometimes I wish I didn't. I own some Ford stock too, and I got news for you. I bought it when it was at $4.40 a share. Look it up. Newsflash, don't forget a pasty. Yeah, if you go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, if you've never had a pasty before, you got to stop and get pasties. I do recommend Lehto's pasties on US 2. No relation to me. Although Muldoon's and Munising's pretty good as well. So, Bad Wrench points out that you can also get a tour of the Ford Rouge truck plant. I've heard of that. I've never done it myself. But if you can get into one of those things, it's worth it. JB Weld, where are the elk in Michigan? There is an elk herd up around this area. And I know that because I see signs for it along I-75. I've never seen an elk. And I forgot if they are allowed to be hunted or hunted on a limited basis or not at all. I'm not sure. But there is an elk herd in the Lower Peninsula. Ilya says that Gurkha soldiers were told they'd be dropped from an airplane. They asked if the plane could fly a bit lower. And someone said, well, then your parachutes won't have time to open. They said, oh, we get parachutes. Bob says, you just mentioned numerous places that brought back many old, long forgotten memories. That's why I watch. Well, I think I appreciate that. I've been going up north, Upper Peninsula of Michigan, at least once a summer since I was born. There were a couple years in there where I didn't make it up, but then I've made up for it since then. I was up there 2 or 3 times last year. I've been up there 10 or 15 times in a year while I was promoting something. But I know the Upper Peninsula and the Mackinac Peninsula in particular so well that I know the back roads. I know the unmarked roads. I know where all the logging trails go. That, you know, it's crazy. But I love that part of the world a lot. And so I go up there every chance I get. And I know some people who go up there and they go, yeah, Steve, I was up there and it's a lot of forests and stuff, but nothing else. I'm like, you know, what? Not enough video games for you or what? JJ CEO 40 asks, do you ever fish? I'm guessing on the Rouge. When I was a child, I fished on one of the upper branches of the Rouge River. We'd catch bluegill and we'd throw them back in. I'm not sure you'd ever want to eat anything that came out of the Rouge River downstream. It's not a good river. It's an unhealthy river, unfortunately. David Melbourne points out the DIA and the Science Center, and I'm sorry I missed that one. The Detroit Institute of Arts is a world-class museum. It's on Woodward Avenue. It's in downtown Detroit. It's up a little ways, but if it's open, you have to check the terms and hours and all that. It's a beautiful museum, and their collection is world-class. They've got 5 or 6 Van Goghs, you know. And I know that was one of the things. Detroit went bankrupt as the municipality, the whole municipality went bankrupt. They went into bankruptcy court, and they were trying to figure out how to get rid of some of their debt, but still come out the other end and survive without completely just ruining everything for everybody. So there were pensions that had to be paid, and they had to negotiate a lot of stuff. There were debts that had to be paid. And somebody said, you do understand that at that moment in time, the city of Detroit owned the DIA. The DIA was an asset of the city. And they said that technically speaking, the creditors, the people that you owe money to, could come into court and say, you liquidate the DIA because that would raise the money to pay us. And so the bankruptcy court and all the principals got together and said, look, we want to avoid that happening because although that would allow them to pay off all their debts, the city would wind up without the DIA and a bunch of other stuff. So they did a bunch of things to try to save it, and they actually managed to. But they got a lot of people to make concessions, a lot of people to donate things, and they wound up saving the DIA. I believe the DIA has now been spun off as an independent organization, much the way the Detroit Zoo was. And so they managed to save it, but it is, without question, a world-class museum, and you could easily spend a day there checking out all the masterpieces. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So it's been a couple of years since I was there, maybe 5 or 6. But again, it's well worth a visit. If they're open, that's certainly something to see. Bender Fender points out that bluegill can be used as bait to catch catfish. What do you do with a catfish? Steve Taylor, great show, Steve. Thanks, got to go. Thank you for checking in. Jupe Turwin, Steve, stay safe. All others stay safe. Signing off. Thank you. Carson Keller says you need a reservation for the DIA. Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me. So as of right now, like I said, check their hours and so on. And if you can get in, get in. If not, maybe wait till later. So Don Store 1, can't believe I would be spending Sunday watching an attorney chat for a couple of hours. Good stuff. Hope you're out here for a long time. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, there's a time when I did radio shows and I'd be sitting in a studio in Flint, Michigan on a Saturday afternoon, but talking to myself. You know, I'd be hoping for phone calls. I didn't always get phone calls, but I didn't have a screen here with people talking to me. So that's modern technology for you. Paul Lemke says the Harley Museum in Milwaukee is awesome. I bet it is. I bet it is. Tigerman 99515, can a judge pick and choose which assets can be excluded from creditors? Well, here's the thing. There are rules that define every single one of those things. It's all laid out right there. And so what they did in the case of Detroit is they brought all the principals, the people who had the biggest stakes in it, they brought them all in figuratively to one table and said, look, we're going to resolve this. And we'd really like to resolve it without Detroit having to cash in the DIA. What can we do here? And they struck a bargain. They called it the grand bargain, but they struck a bargain where they got a bunch of people to agree to taking discounts. They got a bunch of people to agree to pay stuff, and they made it work. But if push came to shove, somebody could have said, you know something? We want our money. We want $1 on $1. Screw you. They could have done that. And at that point, then hard choices have to be made. But they didn't get to that point. So by getting the parties to agree, they came up with a settlement that everyone signed and everyone walked away from and solved the problem. But it was an ugly situation because there have been a few big municipal bankruptcies in American history. And at the time, I believe Detroit's was the largest, but it was almost like uncharted territory. Nobody had ever seen a city that large declare bankruptcy with that much in debt, but those kinds of assets, and people going like, you know, you could sell off these Van Goghs and raise so much money, but people are like, but that's part of what Detroit is, you know? So. Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up, but one last time, I'm going to say this because those books are going to be gone next time you see me. my publisher called me on Monday, said, Steve, if you want any of your books, American Murder Houses, at a discount less than what you normally get them for, you can order some. I said, great. How many are in a case? I said 52. I ordered one case of these books. So from me, you can get this book for cheaper than Amazon. American Murder Houses, it is exactly what you think it is. And from Amazon, it's 16. From me, it's 15. If you want one, email me. My address is in the description below. Email me directly and just say, Steve, I want a book. I will invoice you via Square, which is secure like PayPal. You use a credit card, boom, boom, boom. I've sold 700 or 800 books that way. And I will then sign the book to you or whoever you want me to sign it to, and I'll mail it to you, but you have to be in the US. So I can't do this to Canada, Mexico, or other countries. I'm sorry, but anywhere in the US. And by the way, while I'm doing this, I do have a few other books. Again, while supplies last. Death's Door, the Italian Hall book. That one's $20. Michigan's Columbus, but Douglas Houghton, another $20. The Tucker book, Preston Tucker on the Battlefield Car Tomorrow, forward by Jay Leno, $20. Or the Chrysler Turbine Car, $15. And yeah, if you want more than one book, if I've got them, I'll hook you up. But like I said, when I run out, I run out. I hate to be on your pitch and books, but so many people ask me about books that I thought, you know something? When they said, Steve, you can get the books this cheap, I said, you know something? I'll do a case and just get rid of them. Hey, it's Christmas. They make great. It's a great stocking stuffer. So the $15 is inclusive of shipping. I'll sign it, send it to you, and you'll enjoy the book. Trust me. So there you go. But I'm going to get out of here. We've been on here for over an hour and a half. So I will talk to you guys later. Until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.